Looks like I got kind of bit by the MOTU bug recently. I had heard through a video that I guess they were going to stop production of the MOTU Origins figures. I also heard from another YouTuber that the MOTU Origins were their best figures. And I mean, I had one that my son had gotten me that was on clearance at Walmart, and I just thought, oh, these are the best. Now, I was a member of He-Man.org many, many years ago, and what I'd done is cut up my He-Man figures, and then I made some ball joints using some joints from Q-Joy toys. These are really cool little build-your-own figures from Japan, and I made copies of the Q-Joy stuff, and I used the ball joints, and then I matched the colors and painted them, and then I touched up the paint on the figures themselves. I essentially made my own super articulated He-Man figures, and this was when Classics was kind of rolling out. We had the what was called negatively the Down syndrome He-Man, where the face was kind of not so great. The Four Horsemen sculptors and all of the kind of super articulated Classics figures were really popular for adult collectors. And then eventually, many years later, they came out with the Origins figures. And the Origins are very, very much like the ball jointed figures that I made. Of course, they weren't identical. The ball jointed figures I did had ball jointed ankles, ball jointed knees, a ball joint in the hip that was kind of limited. I disabled the spring action in the figures. I ball jointed the elbows. I put a swivel on the wrists. I left the shoulders the way they were, and that was basically the standard. I didn't really go as far as what they did with the Origins figures, but they really did like an amazing job with the Origins figures. So I just got the Origins Castle Grayskull. I got this for only $70 off of eBay with free shipping. So I think that was a really, really good deal. Let's hope that's not an indicator that they're abandoning this. I really hope they don't. I recently got the 4-pack of one of the more recent waves with several figures, 4 different figures in it, and it was only $25 before shipping. I mean, it ended up being, I think, $35 for 4 figures, and Stratus was in there. This is the flesh tone Stratos that is meant to represent the comic, because in the comics they made him flesh tone instead of gray. So I thought that was pretty neat. I really like the comic interpretations, and they all come with brand new comics. The Origins figures do. And so there's Zodak, who's really, really cool looking. And they have lots of articulation, ball joint heads, and the heads come off. They come with these little inserts that explain to what degree you can manipulate the figures. See if I can grab one here real quick. So here's one for Buzz Off, and you can see that it comes with this, and it shows the points on the figure with this dot where those parts are removable. You can pull the waist off the figure. You can pull from the calves down off. The wrists and the shoulders and the head all come off with relative ease. And then so you can make a lot of customs and swap your figures parts around. So you have a lot of these like leftover heads and that you can swap out. So in my little adventure I ended up buying a lot, just a whole bunch of these Origins figures. Now I found a lot of that with opened, so loose figures of many of the characters that I knew I had to get. It came with a flocked fur panther, 2 different battle cats, a Skeletor, a battle armor Skeletor, the yellow colored Evelyn, which I already have the flesh tone one. My son got me that from Walmart. And several other figures, Man-at-Arms, Ram Man, Fisto, and it was $115 before shipping. It ended up being a little over $160 with shipping, but it also came with the Wind Raider, which is back here, right here, and it came with the Sky Sled. Like I said, 2 Battle Cats and a Panther. It really came with a lot of stuff for that cost. It was not too much. Now, they modeled these to look very much like the original figures, but they are not the same. The quality of the plastic that they use is much, much, much better, and they're super articulated, like the figures have. Ball jointed wrists, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles, a ball jointed neck, waist swivel, and calf swivel are all standard on the majority of the figures. So they're really, really good figures. They also have the castle with accessories. Now, in that lot that I was speaking of, there's $115 before shipping, ended up being a little over $160. It came with some extra Castle Grayskull supplies. So usually you get this one ladder with it. So now I have a second ladder, but on the castle there are actually 2 places for ladders. So it also comes with a white sorceress figure, which is really pretty. Has the little staff there, and it's just beautiful. Nice figure. But I got a lot of doubles of the accessories that go to the castle. So that became kind of one of the big selling points, is that I knew if I got that lot, not only would I get a whole lot of the figures that I knew I wanted, but I'd also be able to get stuff to upgrade the castle to be better than what just the standard castle. Now, I've also been watching videos where they paint the castle. I've seen probably 6 or 7 videos now of people doing custom paint jobs on the front, sometimes the inside, even doing clay sculpted differences. I've seen, like Hebrew, he did new floors and archways that helped to support the panels a little bit better. So I thought that was a really, really cool thing to do. But if I turn that there, you can see this ladder now can go here and fit along that. Okay. Now, at the bottom, though, of the castle, I go ahead and try to turn this down just a hair, you can see there's the other ladder. Okay, so here's the other ladder, and it only comes with 1 ladder, but because I got this lot, I have the second ladder. It also has, so my son just got me Snout Spout. This guy was on clearance at Walmart, which I just think he's just the coolest, because he comes with an extra head, and the extra head has a water pump, and you can feel air coming out of it, and so that's the extra head that can shoot water out of it. And he has more of a filmation look to him. He looks, in my opinion, a lot better. But so it has this flagpole, and on, of course, under it is a peg that works with a kind of hexagonal hole that's on a lot of stuff. And I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, this will fit on there as well. And it does. So that's actually 2 laser guns now that's on the castle, that's on the top of the castle. So if I raise this up, you can see now my castle has 2 laser guns, and this one maybe isn't as cool because it can't really point down very well, but it is there, so it can kind of turn off to the side and stuff. I also have an extra flag here. So I can maybe stand a flag here and then have one back here to be maybe 10% more castle-like. It can make it look a little tiny bit better there. Now you can kind of fix this under here if you really want to. This kind of eventually shimmies its way down, but I've noticed it kind of locks into place slightly, unlike the original. Now the original was hard plastic, and this is kind of a softer, thicker, definitely higher quality plastic. I've noticed that, you know, like most toys today, there's a lot higher quality in the plastic and a lot more detail. I got a second one of these. One of these comes with the Origins Castle Grayskull. So now I have two of these. It also came with a completely full weapons rack. So now I actually have two of the weapons racks instead of just one, which really helps a lot, you know. Have two different weapons and two of the training things here. I think that's what they use that for training. They swing it around and then this hits you and you can block or get out of the way and stuff. That's what I think it's for. Maybe I'm wrong. And also a couple more of these pennants. And if you look here, down at the side is a pennant, and then behind this ladder is a pennant. And I don't even know if there's a place to, well, actually, maybe right here. Yeah, there's a place right here to stick a extra pennant if I want to. But it only comes with two when you buy the castle. So I can actually use this right away. And it looks like there's one here too. There's one underneath this floor to put a pennant there. So there are places to have two extra pennants, but the castle comes with only two to fill in those two places. So I can actually add those to the castle to have more decorations inside of it. Now these figures come with all kinds of cool stuff. Here's a couple of hands. So you know your He-Man only had a gripping hand on the right arm and then the kind of open hand on the left hand. Well, a lot of these have a extra gripping hand for the left hand, so they can dual wield weapons. Perhaps they can hold a shield, you know, a tiny bit better or something like that. You can do that little effect if you want. So the castle is actually really, really neat. It's a tiny bit smaller, just a tiny bit smaller than the original Castle Grayskull, but there are, in my opinion, some improvements. Like the original Castle Grayskull had kind of a crooked cheekbone thing going on. It had a cheekbone on one side that was really big and bulbous and stuck out, and then it had a cheek on the other side that was lower, and so it didn't look as good, I don't think. Go ahead and move some of these guys out of the way real quick so that I can show this off. But okay, now I'm going to go ahead and spread that out, put the ladder back, and then I'll lower this down, and you can see kind of how that looks from the top. And maybe I can lower this down a little bit. I don't know, I'm kind of new to this camera, but there we go. Can adjust that. You can see it has a couple of paint apps, like a green to match, which is probably the color of the plastic, chromed, kind of silver, and then chrome all over, and then brown for the door. And the door opens with a sword. So we put the sword in there, and you can see it's kind of a greenish plastic on that side. So it looks like they used cast brown plastic for the face of it. So that would actually be a matching paint. And then a cast green plastic for the teeth. In the videos I've seen like, you know, a dozen videos, everyone keeps calling this a drawbridge, and I keep yelling jawbridge at the TV, because any awesome child of the 80s like me knows this was called the jawbridge, not a drawbridge. It's not a drawbridge, it's a jaw bridge, which is creative and cool, but that's what it's called. It is not called a drawbridge. Now, originally, the mysticism behind the toys was casually reinforced with comic books, and a lot of kids went, me included. I mean, I'm 46 years old, so this all happened when I was a little kid. These things were marketed directly to me, and I was fascinated and, enamored with Masters of the Universe and stuff. And of course, smart kids like me pointed out to our parents, to my mom, who I was with, look, it comes with a book. It comes with a comic book. And a lot of parents, oh yeah, well, my kid's going to read because I bought this for him. And that little tiny bit of positive reinforcement from the product that your kid can actually use this to read probably sold a lot of those toys, even though it was a massive seething barbarian with a sword and an axe and armor and stuff like that. The selling point of having a book to read helped it out there, and the comic books are excellent. I've read all the new ones are shorter. They're not nearly as long, and they're not the same. So if you think, oh, they're remaking this, it's exactly the same, it's not. And that's another thing I noticed. I saw a comedy kind of advertisement. It was a parody advertisement saying, for all you, man children, buy the same, crap, and we're going to repackage the same crap for you. These are not the same. I don't want to, I'm not trying to get in a big stupid argument about it, but, like the new Ghostbusters toys, those kind of are exactly the same. They are exactly the same figures that we had back then. They are absolutely exactly the same. They're just, the packages are slightly different. I think maybe they're made with a little tiny bit different plastic, but the molds, the articulation, and everything to do with it, they really are exactly the same. So I guess if you want to make fun of that, that's a little easier. But these are not the same. They are not the same as the toys that I had when I was a kid. They are super articulated with higher quality plastic, with better paint jobs, with more details. And at the same time, they are strongly reminiscent of the original products in that they have the same kind of advertisements on the backs of the comics that they had. And they actually look more like this. Like, if you might remember, He-Man figures usually seem to have little stubby legs, and they didn't have articulation. They had a rubber band in their waist, a spring in the top of their waist, so they could do like a spring-loaded punch. They had shoulder articulation, and their head could spin, and that was it. They didn't have any other articulation, and that was enough. They also had armor that could come off, and they had interchangeable parts and weapons, so you could swap the arms out and weapons and all kinds of stuff like that. But the comics enforced, like I said, loosely, but a lot of people looked at it and thought, oh, Castle Grayskull, that's the Skull Guy's castle. So then this throne turns, and it has the falling out floor like the original toy, but it's higher quality. This throne is a thicker, stronger plastic than the hard plastic of the original. Okay, now the toys. Battle Cat, this one is part of a set where he's wounded, but Battle Cat has swivel, ball-jointed legs, a ball-jointed head and neck. His eyes are painted. Now, some people might not know this, but the original Battle Cat was actually based on a different toy, like a circus zoo tiger toy from some company, and you could find them in the wild. You could find what they originally based Battle Cat off of, and it's painted like a normal tiger. I think maybe the base of it was green before painting, and so when they produced Battle Cat, they made him armor and a helmet, and then they made this, striped stencil for the factory color, but it's a green battle tiger creature now. But it started out as like a zoo tiger creation that was for other purposes. And the figures themselves were they didn't have their own perfectly designed backdrop. And I think that the cartoon kind of designated itself as a sole existing kind of work on its own. So you could love the He-Man cartoon and not be into the toys. You could love the toys and know nothing about the cartoon. You could love the comics and then say, oh, well, all my toys are, like the comics. Or you could try to make them like the cartoon. And eventually, through the years of the popularity, waxing and waning and all that, they started to make the comic books more like the cartoon. The stories started to just kind of intertwine and merge, and it became basically the same story. So eventually, you could say that the cartoon story consumed the comic book and then kind of digested it. And then what you ended up with was the story. But in the original comic book, He-Man was a barbarian, and he found this armor. He was led to it, I think, possibly by the Tila sorceress, who's the Tila with the snake armor and stuff. And he found this armor, and this armor was like high-tech, and he didn't even understand what it was. And so it reinforced this idea that He-Man is a barbarian world with some leftover technology and some mysticism and magic and stuff kind of woven in. And that was easier for a kid to play with and to enjoy because it was more open-ended playing. It didn't have to follow a story design or anything like that. You could just kind of do whatever you wanted with it. And that's the Tila. And this was my very first figure when I was a little kid, was somebody's old Tila figure. She didn't have the snake armor or the shield or the staff. She was just the Tila figure, and she was like my favorite toy for a super long time. Then I got a Skeletor that was also a used, Skeletor that someone gave me, and only he he didn't have the body armor here. He just had the upper body armor part, and then this part here was missing. I didn't actually get a Skeletor with one of these until way later in life. And I don't think he had the staff thing either. He was just Skeletor. A lot of used hand-me-down yard sale stuff, and that happened a lot more when you were kids. No one, around me or in my life was like, oh, we need to collect these up because they'll be worth something someday. They were actually, they were relegated to, like 10-cent and 50-cent boxes of toys at yard sales, and people could just gobble them up and then maybe give them to their kid to throw around in their bedroom or jam full in their toy box. So there wasn't the eBay aftermarket pull of all these toys. Now I had the original Castle Grayskull. I'd made a massive collection of all of the Masters of the Universe. I had almost every figure. I had a lot of the vehicles and stuff, and what I did was I put a big lot of it for sale on eBay, and I made a lot of them. I had hundreds of dollars on that lot. I tried to make somebody really, really happy, and they were really, really happy, because this was your chance to get the majority of the He-Man figure collection and stuff. And it was not cheap, but it wasn't as expensive as if you hunted everything down in the wild. And it had the hard-to-attain gun that came with the Castle Grayskull. It was a 100% complete Castle Grayskull with a pretty degraded but complete box that went with it. Now, the Castle Grayskull tools, or the weapons rack thing, this doesn't have it. This doesn't have the part I'm talking about, but there was a small gun that came with it, and almost every kid and everybody lost theirs. And so they were really hard to find. I actually saw them on eBay for over $70 or more just for that one tiny gun. And so I actually had that with my Castle Grayskull. It kind of boosted it and gave it that much more appeal. And so it did sell almost immediately. I also did that with my Silverhawks collection, my Thundercats collection, my She-Ra collection. I basically make massive lots with the most amount of toys you can get all at once, and then they get sold. I have, really great positive feedbacks from those sales. One thing I didn't want to do, though, was try to piece them all together, individually, and then hopefully someone will buy all my stuff. First off, that'd be more expensive for a person and would kind of maybe drive them away. But also, that never happens that way. No one's going to buy your stuff. So what's going to end up happening is someone will pick through your stuff then, and they'll get the most valuable stuff you have, and then you'll be stuck with the stuff you can't sell that is the least valuable stuff. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to waste my time with that. So I did a big lot. Now this time when I was buying these guys up, it was partly from, the intuition and information that these are going to be rare and hard to find probably soon. And that they're not going to be just hanging out there for everybody to grab up because Mattel might not be making them as much, or they might be harder to get. And certain ones are relatively rare already, like Triclops. I don't have him yet, and he is over $100 usually, just the Triclops figure. Another one that's super expensive, but I managed to get a really good deal on him, was Trapjaw. And this Trapjaw is exceptional. He's ball jointed, he's got a jointed elbow, which the original didn't have. So you can actually bend that. He has the classic claw and hook weapons and the belt. They also made one based on the comic that is green, and he has more normal, not robotic looking legs. And but he does have the mechanical arm, but it's silver, and he looks like the comic book, which was, my oldest son, he just found that comic book in his room, because I gave him a massive collection of MOTU figures too from the originals. Basically anything that I wasn't going to put with the collection I was going to sell, I gave to him. So he ended up with a really large collection of MOTU figures. And he had the comic book from Trapjaw, which, again, as I said earlier, the comics from the original figures were much, much larger, a longer read, and arguably higher quality comics. The new comics are modern. The stories are short, and probably even better for like younger kids to be able to digest. And they are cute. They're fun little reads. I've read most of the ones I have. I just got a bunch today, but all the ones I had before the lot that I got today, I've already read them all, and I like the stories. Now, my favorite of all now, and of course this was not how I was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, my favorites were probably, simple Teela and He-Man, or maybe Teela Man-at-Arms or something like that. Whenever we got Man-at-Arms, all the little kids got a ballpoint pen and drew a mustache on him because he didn't have a mustache. So I did that because I was like, it's Duncan, it's Man-at-Arms, because I'd been watching the cartoon up to that point. He doesn't have a mustache, so we get a pen or a marker or something, we draw a little mustache on Man-at-Arms. But they put a mustache on him now. They also have a figure you can buy that's an Eternian guard with the covered mouth helmet and the armor that resembles the cartoon, and an additional head that is the original mustacheless Man-at-Arms head. But my favorite now is Faker. And I just love so much about this figure. He's my favorite MOTU figure now, and it's not because he's a bad guy or whatever. I think it has more to do with the just blatant creativeness of the figure. Like just like the Lambo brothers from the Transformers, they were just recolors of each other. I really love that what they did was took one mold of body and a couple different types of legs, couple different types of arms, couple different types of upper torsos, and a couple different types of head. And so, you've got He-Man, and then you've got Skeletor, and what this is a Skeletor colored He-Man with a orange Skeletor armor, a sword, and then a cool little sticker on his chest that looks kind of like a robotic tape player or recorder or something. Okay, and on this, it's actually it's on his chest. It's like, it's on there. It's like a paint application or something. It's not some sticker you're going to lose or something. It's on there permanently, and it looks really cool. It looks almost identical to the original. But this figure is just super, super cool, and I really like him. I think that he's just really cool. Part of the big cool point of MOTU is that it's barbarians. It's like animal-man hybrid beings, and they call them goddesses and warlords and stuff like that. And then you also have robots and laser guns and technology mixed in. Like, what if barbarians had technology? It's really actually very stirring, and it's very tempting and provocative and interesting. Now I came up with an excuse for why all Eternians are completely ripped, even if they're lazy and they don't ever work out or anything. And why they had stubby legs, because the original Eternians would have been the toys that had the little tiny stubby legs. And so I came up with the excuse that on Eternia everyone is myostatin deficient, and so they're all super muscular no matter what, no matter workout or anything like that. And so during growth spurts, their femurs and their leg bones and stuff are strangulated by the excessive muscle mass, thus leading to stubby tiny legs and giant upper bodies. And so, and that was just fun to come up with that. And of course I like the at least the explanation, the hinting at an explanation for why the Eternians are all really healthy and full of energy and stuff, that is presumed and expressed in the Masters of the Universe live action movie with Dolph Lundgren. Tila shows that they are all essentially vegetarian, vegan people. They don't eat animals at all. And of course that's going to make you super, super healthy and strong and everything like that. She's like, what are these white sticks they put on? He says, oh, those are rib bones. And she spits it out and is like, you mean this was alive? And he goes, oh, he says something to the effect of, your stomach is in control of your survival, something cute like that. Now, some of the flaws I've noticed is you get sticky joints on some of these figures. This guy, I need to get in here with a razor or something and kind of get the plastic separate so that I'm not breaking this just by bending his knee, because that's going to happen. But he has a swap out head, shoulder motion, elbows and wrists. The original Ram Man, of course, was just like this. See? And it had a switch or something that sprung him up. And this one has that same springiness, but it also has articulated ball jointed knees. It has an interchangeable head, 2 different axes, swivel wrist, ball joint elbow, swivel ball jointed shoulders. It's kind of soft armor. It's a more complicated, obviously way more complex figure, and it's really cool. He's really great. The extra helmet is like that. It actually has a mouthpiece that covers his face. Okay, so yeah, I would recommend looking into scooping up the Origins figures while you can, and hopefully they will keep making them. And I guess there's one wave that they know is still coming out and people are picking it up, but I really hope they don't abandon it, just because there's so much more they can do with it. One case in point is when they made She-Ra, there was actually a competing version of She-Ra called Golden Girl. Not Golden Girls with, Estelle Getty and all that. Golden Girl. And what they were was like She-Ra, only they had snap knees like a Barbie, rubber kind of legs like miniature Barbies. They had brushable hair. They had metal shields that were like gem encrusted. They looked really amazing. They had a couple of dude characters, a bearded guy, a long-haired guy with a sword. I have them all. And I've kept them. I have no intention of selling my Golden Girl collection because they really are that great. They were bigger than She-Ra, though. And my point being, the She-Ra toys, as cool as they might have been, they did not match the scale of He-Man. So when they're saying, let's create this offshoot to market it to girls, they really kind of confined it to girls. And any boys who wanted to pick up She-Ra figures to go along with the really cool, fruity, campy cartoon, you can't really easily incorporate them into your He-Man collection because they're all too short and too thin, and they just don't look right mixed in with your He-Man figures. Now, what they've done with Origins is they made a couple, or at least one, they made She-Ra, and they've got Hordak, and they've got some of the Horde coming out, and so even some of the Horde robots. I think that the next logical progression would be to go ahead and make the She-Ra figures this scale and this size. To have the Pegasus, an articulated winged Pegasus unicorn, that would be extremely awesome. To have all the cool characters that came out with She-Ra, and then redo them in this origin style like they did with She-Ra, I think that would be a great idea. And I really hope they don't give up and back off before they can do something really cool like that. But you know how toy lines work. They're counting their money, and if it's not, lining their pockets to the degree that they expect it to, then they're going to back off and let it die out. And there's been at least one solid indicator that that's what they're doing, next to 7 to 10 doubter, naysayer kind of people who are, oh no, they wouldn't do that, no, they're not doing that, and stuff like that. So hopefully they won't, but I don't know. I'm not an insider, and I actually bought all of these in like 1 week, except for the one my son got me from Walmart, which is this really cool, and he's got the arm motion, which is more reminiscent of the original toys that had kind of some kind of built-in action. Now the gimmick, of course, on the new toys is just that they're realistic, super articulated, and that you can easily customize them. You can just completely tear them apart and put one's legs on one and arms on the other and paint them up and do whatever you want. Another thing they did that's really cool is they made cartoon accurate toys in the Origins series and also comic accurate toys. So where this is the cartoon or actually maybe comic accurate merman. Okay, he's got the face and everything in the eyes. He's more like a comic kind of accurate one. And then this guy, who's very much a just like the original. And then he does kind of resemble the cartoon a little. Of course, they did this kind of weird wave thing on his face, and he was a lot different on there. A lot of the characters were a lot different. And Super 7 did a non-super articulated MOTU series. They're not super articulated, but they have different head sculpts and paint jobs and stuff that make them look like if MOTU had made all their characters to be Filmation accurate. So they have a Filmation accurate Trapjaw and Merman and Skeletor and He-Man. Their faces and everything, their head sculpts and stuff, look like if the cartoon was the MOTU toy line. Now they don't have super articulated figures though. So I really think that the level of articulation and the quality of plastic and the design of the Origins figures puts them, leaps and bounds above any of the other ones that are out, even classics. I think, and I've had a lot of classics, I think these are better than the classics. And the biggest reason I think that is because the classics used joints in the knees and arms and all over that were kind of a soft, and they're like the same kind of plastic that was used for the body. And I actually had several of those. The pins in them are soft plastic, the joints are plastic, and they break. They break very easily. And some of these get kind of a little sticky-ish, but they're easy to work out. Maybe if you get a tiny blade or something and kind of work it out a little bit, it'll work every time. And as long as you're careful with them, they're not going to break. They're very sturdy and rugged and durable. If they are stuck, though, and you force bend them, they're going to break. That's how toys are. Now, I've got these bad guys that were part of the 2000X series, and I just really like them as bad guys for these guys. They're not from the series, but I think they work really great. And the Sky Sled is really great, but I honestly like the battering ram, toy from the vintage series better, because you get the battering ram and then the front comes off and can be the Sky Sled, and I really love that. Now in the cartoon they didn't really show, that I can remember, they didn't show the battering ram part of it, so they only showed the Sky Sleds. But if you can get a few of those, they actually are really good. And another point, these are basically cross compatible with the vehicles, the mounts, the castles, the palaces. Some of the figures probably work in pretty easily, even though these are slightly taller because of the better articulation in the ball jointed legs and stuff. There are also some variances. There are some varieties. Like there's this, we've got Evelyn, and you can see where her knee is actually part of the, you can see the knee here is part of the sculpt coming down over the ball joint. Okay, and then there's a second variant where you can see the knee is actually like a sharper kind of edge that is not a kneecap hanging down over it. But this essentially is the same. She's the same skin tone, and they look very, very similar. Almost identical, except the knees. And the same applies to Tila and to the sorceress. So this is the sorceress that came with my castle. She's got the kneecaps. And then this is a second sorceress that has the kind of cut off knees. And it's really just looks. It's just how it looks. It really doesn't affect the joint or anything, really. It doesn't affect it at all. There are also some maybe quality control kind of processing errors that I've noticed. Like this mask, this bird mask, seems to be kind of off-centered. It's revealing more of the left side of her head than the right. And so I would wish that that's kind of scooted over to the left a little bit. The other one doesn't have that, but the full color one, based like Filmation, has just the ever slightest twist in the little bird face hat thing. And I think when they're assembling these and gluing them together in the factories and stuff, the tiniest little variants can happen that will kind of affect it. That's how the original toys were. Sometimes you get a Skeletor whose face had a whole bunch of green outline and the yellowish part of it was kind of closed in. And then sometimes you would get a Skeletor with barely any of that green stuff going on. And, so they had, these were being made by people in a factory. So they're tiny, tiny little differences you might point out. And of course they have Taiwanese and Mexican made MOTUs, and the qualities were different on both. They had, I think, some hard-headed ones before everything went squishy-headed. And so those are rare and sought after. One thing that's really great I noticed is the Manny Faces figure actually has a spinning head. So you can actually look around. Unlike the original's head was fixed permanently like that, but you could spin this to get the different faces. This has the different faces, but it also has that extra spin, which gives him way, way more. But his legs actually do kind of have that shorter kind of original MOTU figure look to them. But most of them have kind of escaped that little bit of silliness. Like his legs really don't look too short. They look actually kind of long. They look the right, I guess the right proportion for your, super buff guy. So yeah, they're very high quality. Now I bought several lots. Many of them were packaged and new. I looked through hundreds of sales on eBay, and I tried to get the very best deals that I possibly could. Some of them, one I found was a lot with 6 different figures, and all of them were rare, valuable ones in the packages. Snatched that up really fast because it was a great price for all 6 of those figures. And they were rare ones like Trap Jaw, Manny Faces, and I think Zodak, maybe Buzz Off. It was a bunch of them. It was really, really great ones. Roboto, I think, might have been in there. Then I got a 3-pack that actually had Faker and 2 other ones mixed in. And so I think 3 of the deals I got were actually in the packages, but then I got this really big lot that was, about $1.60, a little over $1.60, and it came with the extra Grayskull parts, the super articulated battle cats, the flocked. Now, of course, this is the flocked Panther. You can see and feel the softness like the original Panther. These have articulated mouths, though, and ball-jointed necks, painted eyes that look really, really excellent painted eyes. Legs move. The armor can come off. It's just excellent. And then in one of them that I got, one that came with 6 different figures, the guy said, oh, there's room in the box, so I'm going to throw this in for free. So he threw in this unflocked Panther for free of charge. So he kind of threw this in, and then the same day my son told me that they actually had this Panther in the clearance aisle at Walmart. I don't know, maybe it was $15 or something like that. But these are exceptional. They're really, really that good. I can't see why they would back off unless there's really a problem. But, I hope they don't. I hope they keep making them and keep on selling as many of them as they can. Some of them might not be as popular as others. But then there are some that are really, really popular, like Trapjaw and Manny Faces is popular. Triclops is very, very popular and hard to get. There's a couple of versions of Hordak now, one with like saws that shoot out of his chest and one that's just a black suit, normal Hordak. And his head sculpt is excellent. It's the best Hordak I've ever seen. He's just that good. They also have She-Ra, which looks really excellent, and like I said, she is a He-Man scale, like 5.5-inch She-Ra. And that would be my big hope, is that they would continue with the series and just fill in all the gaps with the She-Ra characters and the Horde characters. Maybe even, bring out Fright Zone, like a more complete interactive version of Fright Zone, Snake Mountain, maybe even like a new, like the Palace of Eternia or something that has never been made before. But, they'll probably just give up on it and then let it kind of drift. But I really hope that they don't do that. I hope that they continue with the series. So this was my lot of MOTUs that I picked up over the past week. I went from having 2 of them. I had a flesh-toned, and both were bought for me by my older son, who has a job and goes to work, and he homeschools and hangs out with me. We talk about Transformers and about He-Man, all kinds of stuff. We talk about everything. And he got me the Evelyn and the spinning He-Man with all the shiny chrome armor and stuff like that. Really great figure. And then I just said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this now. I'm gonna go ahead and get as much of it as I possibly can, as fast as I can. And I just harnessed this relatively massive collection of MOTU figures as quickly as possible. So I got Scareglow in there, and he charges up and glows, is super articulate, has a really cool cape that bends and looks super cool. That's excellent. Got Roboto, Snout Spout, got 2 different mermans, I got 3 different sorceresses, I got He-Man, I got Battle Armor He-Man, and I got that Tornado He-Man, Tornado Punch or whatever, Triple Punch He-Man. I got a couple of Skeletors, I've got a Battle Armor Skeletor, Fisto, Zodak, Faker, Buzz-Off, Man-E-Faces, Beast-Man, Stratos, Fisto, Man-at-Arms. The Man-at-Arms, man, this is just incredible. And the armor is a little bit softer on these than the original. It fits a little better and it comes off easier, but it looks really, really good. It's almost the same, but just a little bit different. The face is great. And the face really does look exactly like the original, only with a mustache. It looks exactly, this is how the original toy looked. The heads, they're not hollow. The heads are like a really high quality plastic. So yeah, Fisto's looking great. He's got the sword, the same look, same sword, only a little better. And I've noticed that is the plastic on the weapons is better. Just everything's better. All around, everything, the details, paint jobs, especially, you know, you can do so many things with the articulation of the figures. The weapons don't warp and stuff like the originals. They kind of have a more rigid plastic and a little bit better detail, and they're just better, all around better. So yeah, I also got these little guys that came with one of those sets, these little gargoyle looking monster guys, and something that looks like it might be able to add to Castle Grayskull. It's this panel that came with the Battle Cat, the injured Battle Cat, and it can pop apart. I noticed it can kind of pop apart like this, and it can snap back together. And I just kind of feel like I want to kind of, you know, maybe jam that right there, and then maybe put this one over here and just kind of let that be some extra Castle Grayskull bits there. And I'm sure there's something that can be done with that. But yeah, I don't know if they're going to do point dread like they did with the original Castle Grayskull, where it actually extends and attaches to the top, and the point dread, the ship can kind of land on it. But what I've heard they did was made it so that the Wind Raider can kind of attach to the top of the castle, which is, the Wind Raider is gigantic. It is easily, you know, almost twice as wide and more detailed and way higher quality than the original Wind Raider. The original Wind Raider's, the wings snapped off relatively easily. When you're a little kid, the wings got snapped off in no time. They had a cool little gimmick with a rope and a kind of a hook pulley system on the front, so when the head of the thing spun, it would pull and draw in the rope. Like you could pick up a character while flying and then turn the head around to draw them up closer to it. And the Sky Sled actually comes with an extra head for it and extra emblem pieces that snap into the side. So it can be like a green dragon Sky Sled or a red dragon Sky Sled, which I don't know. That seems to have some type of reason for that going on there. I don't know. But yeah, Buzz-Off has the pop-off mask, but his head is just exceptional detail. Looks really, really good. Now this doesn't fold down completely over his eyes. I'm pretty sure the original maybe did fold down a little tiny bit better, But he also, in turn, has these cool little antennae popping up. But yeah, that kind of just sits down over his head. I think, if I might be mistaken, but I think the original Buzz-Off actually collapsed down over the eyes a little tiny bit more. But, you know, all of the extra stuff this guy comes with, all of the articulation and stuff, he's just way, way, way better than the original toy. You know, when we were kids, there were ones that were less popular, and you'd just see aisles full of them. Like, I think Stinkor maybe wasn't as popular of a character. And there were some of them that you always saw lingering around the aisles. And then sometimes you'd go to Kmart or wherever you're going, and you'd have a really hard time finding He-Man, you know. So yeah. But I actually have a Fright Zone without the tree on top of it. But it has the working, and no puppet, but it has the hole in it, and it has the working jail cell kind of thing with wooden kind of panel gate, and that works fine, and it looks really cool. And I have a slime pit that's actually from the 2000X series. I thought of getting rid of, but I might work that in for fun. So yeah, MOTU was a huge part of my childhood growing up. And eventually, though, when I started getting crazy about wrestling and stuff like that, all my He-Man figures graduated to wrestling figures. And so I just had my figures. He-Man would just have no armor but be a wrestler. And then I had wrestling figures that were the ones that were by Remco, like Ric Flair, stuff like that. And then I'd have them wrestle with He-Man. And so even after He-Man kind of fizzled, I still played with the toys and had fun with them and stuff. So yeah, and this castle is excellent. I mean, for $70 with free shipping, it was a complete steal. And it has plastic where the other had cardboard, like the computer up on the back. That was a cardboard piece. This part was a cardboard piece. It had like a cardboard space suit. But a lot of it looks very, very much like the original, although it's just all higher quality, better plastic, better looking, and you know, there's no like cardboard cutout stuff that's just going to fray and warp and get nasty over time. It's all plastic. And yeah, well, that's my new kind of MOTU Origins experience so far. I plan on trying to get more of the figures eventually to get a more complete collection, although there are several figures that I just have no desire or intention to buy. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get King Hiss. I was never really into him that much, but I might get Cobra Khan because he was awesome. We were kids, we had Cobra Khan, and we'd put like perfume or something and then spray his mouth. It was just a blast. You know, they were such fun toys. And, you know, I miss that time. I'm one of those people that I kind of believe, to a degree anyway, that the 80s was a better time to be alive. Even though we still had bad stuff going on, and it wasn't exactly perfect, in my opinion, it was just, there was a spirit about it that was better. And, you know, I really loved being alive then. But of course, I like a lot of the stuff we've come out with now. Better computers, better video games. I can do a lot of work with a computer today that, you know, didn't even exist. It would have been science fiction witchcraft back in the 80s to even suggest that you could do the work that you can do with a computer today. So, of course, there are things about today that I just love and I don't want to be without. But then I think about the simplicity and character of the 80s and the positive vibe, even though it may have been kind of a commercial cartoon manufactured Saturday morning cartoon cereal eating kind of fake vibe. It was a food coloring vibe. It was a fakeness to it, but it was still positive for me. You know, we'd go to the laundromat and play Pac-Man and then get you know, little cheap crappy toys out of quarter machines, and we would You know, we would ride around everywhere and not wear our seatbelts, and we'd go to drive-in theaters, and we would just, no one had a magic mirror iPhone tablet thing that they were just constantly, incessantly staring at and never looking away. No one had anything like that. We would unplug our phone because it was fun and we didn't want to be bothered. We wouldn't care if you tell someone, oh, in the future, you're going to be carrying a phone around everywhere you go and you're going to be staring at it all the time, every day, recording everything and looking at everything. Oh, no. I think most people would have thought that that was torture and that that's not a future any of us would want to live in. So this reminds me of all of that. It reminds me of that creativity and simplicity and that air of innocence that was part of the 80s, part of growing up in the 80s. And then everything just got so much more complicated and so much more serious and so much more damning and so much more, it's just like now every single thing is just so damn important and so critical and you can't ever say or do anything wrong. It's like society has adopted a thought crime kind of judgment scale without any help from the government or from justice systems and stuff, and we all just lambaste each other with this kind of a mockery. And in the 80s, it really didn't exist. If you wanted to see someone, you visited them. We all had to gather and, hang out together. Problem in the 80s was, you were smoking in the bathroom, or you forgot your pencil, or, somebody pooped their pants in class, or, you fell and skinned your knee in recess, and nothing was really big and serious and terrible. But today, you might have a network of friends that you never see that are on your device, and then all of a sudden you say the wrong thing one day, and you've been blacklisted, and everyone hates you, and you have no presence amongst them, and it just sucks. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And we've all done it. Every one of us has recycled ourselves over and over again through just the most minor. There's no originality. You have to fit a bracket, and then if you waver or are hypocritical, or if you make a mistake, it costs you everything as fast as it can. It's just wrong. And so I believe that the spirit of the 80s is far superior to the modern spirit that we have. Yeah, we might have some better stuff, but I don't know, we need that back. I think we really need it. People need to get rid of those terrible phones. They need to coagulate and coerce and cohese together. We need drive-in movies again, and we need to walk. We need to stop with all of the social fakes. They're fake, actually, because they call it social media, right? But it's not social because you're not really together. And it's not media because it's not like a propagandist effort it has all that in it. It's interwoven with the propagandist efforts right alongside it. We call it pop-up, or we call it, whatever's going on in it. But then we're just a fake. You become an avatar, and then your avatar is a fake, polished version of you, and you're never that avatar. That avatar is never you, but everyone judges the avatar like it's you, and you don't know anyone. Then you don't really know anyone. We all knew each other. We knew each other so well that we knew how bad our farts stunk, and we had a different type of camaraderie that was actually real. I think the 80s had a built-in camaraderie, and that needs to come back. And maybe these toys kind of remind me of that a lot. They remind me of how, I don't know, I just felt so great then. Even though my life was really poor and in shambles and, all kinds of, I could write a book on how crappy everything really was, but I was able to ignore that and be positive with my, Captain Crunch, and sitting in your underwear watching cartoons all day on Saturday and forgetting your pencil, and hearing about some kid smoking in the bathroom, and arm wrestling, and gym class was the greatest thing, and I'm going to walk 4 miles to my friend's house, and your mom's like, okay, come home for dinner. There's no phone. You could be abducted by aliens and no one would know. And we got back where we were supposed to go. And everybody knew everything was okay to a degree. I think we gave up our spirit to have a magic mirror so we can constantly look at ourselves. We need our spirit back.